I thought it was interesting to go through very quickly some of the jobs we did around the world. I thought it was interesting because, firstly, I'm speaking to most of you that are all artists. I mean, you do your own mosaics. And we're not artists. We are just artisans that work for artists. So our way to approach a mosaic is totally different. Firstly, of course, all of us, my father was a teacher for 18 years at the School of Mosaic in Spilimbergo, and everybody that I work with did the School of Mosaic in Spilimbergo. And mostly after the experience of the 3 or 4 years of school, then we have a kind of 4 or 5 years of training before reaching the highest skills of mosaic. Why I'm saying this? Because you understand that when you work for a different artist, everyone has his own expectation. You get into contact with very modern artists, you get into contact with very traditional artists, Byzantine artists. So you really have to learn and know perfectly all the techniques possible, from the most classical to the modern, going through all the other techniques, which is a quite long process, and you have to really get into it. So I thought it was interesting to go through quickly, so I'm going to finish speaking, I promise, and we'll see the images. So I decided to start from the job in Knock, which is next door here, and I think this is the reason why I was called, because I think somebody knew about what was going on in Knock, and this huge mosaic that stays behind, it's about 200 square meters, so it's 14 meters by 14 meters, 196 square meters. It stays behind the altar, and it shows, of course, the apparition that happened in 1876 in Knock. This job, we did it last year. It has been installed on February of this year, and I can tell you, it has been different than all the other projects that we've done, more from an emotional side. What I'm saying is that when we did this project and we installed it, it was incredible to see the effect that this project had on the people of Knock. We do have many churches around the world. You will see some of them. But this was the first time I really had an incredible effect, a response of the people that were truly emotional about, and unfortunately, the images don't give the idea of what it is walking into there. Of course, you can believe or not believe. It's just a matter of energy that the day of the unveiling was just an incredible, something unique. It never happened to me in all my life. So for this reason, it was particular. The artist, P.J. Lynch, did an incredible job. I think that most of the mosaics, most of the most beautiful mosaics are beautiful because there is a great relation between the artist, us artisans, even the commissioner. And so when all the team together works, this gives an idea of the dimension. When all the team works together, when everybody understands what are the necessities of the other, then really you get the most beautiful jobs. I can tell you, it's funny to say, but sometimes we meet very, very famous worldwide known artists that arrive with their idea and they give you the job and they say, okay, you are the mosaic, do whatever you need to do. And sometimes on the opposite side, you get new artists that maybe are afraid that you're going to ruin the job, and so they come to you and say, I want you to do this, I want you to do that, let me check the colors, let me check this, let me check that. And then it's difficult because, of course, an artist paints or creates his own images, but translating into mosaic is a totally different thing. It's a different language. So if we get a little bit of freedom in working, it's usually better for the final aspect of the job. I just showed this image because this job was not done reverse on paper and then installed directly like you did on the previous work. We firstly reversed it on mesh in our place, and then we placed it in bigger sections up to the wall. Why this? Because this is a technique we used recently because we transfer from paper to mesh, fiberglass mesh, with a glue called Keralastic. It's made by Mapei. The particular thing of this glue is that it's a kind of rubber. It keeps the mosaic flexible and so protects the mosaics against cracks that could happen, especially when you have big scale mosaics and the building moves or things like that, and the mosaic cannot hold the building. So if you have this particular glue, it's very, very good because it gives some flexibility to the entire job. Plus, it makes a very clean installation because having it already on mesh, you just need to put the grout up on the wall and you attach the thing, so you don't need to use water, you don't need to. So in some particular cases, maybe where you work in a church where everything is completed, this could be a good solution. Okay, let's go on. This is the detail of the face. PJ did an incredible job. I mean, he is such a great artist. This was a little floor that was in front of the altar. Why we did the church in Knock? Because the Monsignor, Father Richard, the rector of the Basilica in Knock, went to see these jobs that we've done in the Basilica of the National Shrine. These were 2 domes of 400 square meter each. They've been done between 2008 2009. Of course, this is the Basilica of the National Shrine, the biggest church in the United States, Catholic church in the United States. And as you see on the side, there are some areas that you can see, especially down on the lower part. You see that bigger dome, which is actually the job that we're working now. That's the main dome. It's called the Trinity Dome. This is the drawing of the dome. So I would like to bring your attention to the 2 main scenes, which is this one down below, the Trinity, and up the Madonna of the Immaculate Conception, because just to give you an idea of the scale, this is the image. So you see people down there. So this is the Trinity scene, and below there, this is the Madonna scene with people standing near. So you really get this and say, this is 1,750 square meters. This is done reverse. On paper, you can see all the paper sections there. So this is going to be installed reverse and install it directly on the wall. Of course, it has to be done in this way because a dome is curved, and so only the paper can follow the curved wall. If I can give you just a little suggestion, if it's possible, I saw before in the making of the other mosaic, the drawing was moving together with the production, and therefore you ended up that maybe the thing was a little smaller or a little larger. Okay, in Spilimbergo we do the opposite. Firstly, we prepare the drawing completely, and we do also the setting plan and everything. So all the drawing part, all the preparation part, we suggest to do it way before, because in that way you'll have a perfect idea of what the thing is going to become, and also the setting plan and everything. Then you start doing the mosaic. Of course, the paper, when you put the glue on top, it has an enlargement. Usually it's about 1%, but really this changes according to the type of paper. But if you leave the upper part of the mosaic where the enlargement of the paper goes, you leave it for last before ending, you can always check the size, and you say, okay, I have 1 centimeter more, 1 centimeter less. At that point, you correct the paper, and you finish the mosaic. For the installer, it will be a much easier life to have a perfect mosaic that goes up. So it's, of course, we always see it from a point of view of production. So even for the installer, here we're going to have a tough time sending people. 1,750 square meter is a lot. So we will have teams of installers changing, and everything has to be settled and careful. So this is a detail of the face. Of course, everything is very big. Why we did the 2 domes in Washington and now the Trinity? Because we worked in the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. So it's funny because we never do any type of commercial publicity or nothing like that. We're getting works because one priest talks to another. It's like, you know, one word. And so it's exactly how it's happening. So these are the jobs we did in the Holy Sepulchre. This was just the ceiling. But of course, we did the pendentives under the main dome. And as you see, this is Byzantine. So it's a totally different technique. Byzantine is like mathematics. It's 1,000 years that it's been done in the same way. We were lucky to get in contact with this artist. His name was Vlasios Tsotsonis. This was the first church we did for him. It was more than 1,000 square meters of entire mosaic. He taught us how to do mosaic, how to do Byzantine, excuse me. When we firstly did his drawings, we were translating them in a natural way that we thought was correct. But he came and he said, no. He said, you're doing wrong. The face has to be half green, half more brownish. Above the eye, there has to be some orange. So he was like telling us all the rules that Byzantine mosaics had from always. And for us, it was learning. So we learned how to do Byzantine in all these years. So these are all samples of Byzantine mosaic. You see one side of the face. This was a dome we did in Kavala, northeast of Greece. This is how it looks like. So we did many churches for him. These are the details. And this is samples of Byzantine. This is other thing. I brought this just to show you. This I think it's one of the highest mosaics around. I don't know in the world, but for sure in Europe, I think, because this is more than 2,000 meters up on the top of a mountain, and it was built, this mausoleum was built more than 100 years ago, and for the century, after 100 years, they decided to cover it with mosaics on the sides. And so for this, we experimented some glues. We used products from Mapei, but we used also products from Laticrete. Laticrete is an American company that if you have mosaics that have to go way up in the mountains, very cold, the ice, or under the water, Laticrete products are incredible. This thing is up already, was built in 2001, 2002. So I went to see it recently when I made these pictures, and it's perfect. I mean, I was really scared, you know, the wind, the ice, the cold, everything can destroy a mosaic. It's perfect. It's still up. Not one stone came down. So it was really nice. This one is inside this little building. And with this, I just wanted to show a couple of samples of very classical translation. This is a translation of a Van Dyck mosaic. This is another Christ in the Garden. This is in California in a cemetery. And this is a floor made in marble. Very soft and always in the cemetery, but this is in Italy. So this is all for the religious side. So let's jump into things that I think for you will be much more interesting. And it's about, I think so, I mean. And let's talk about public artwork. Public artwork and our relation with the United States starts because we lived there for 10 years. This is where my bad English comes from. So my father moved to New York after being a teacher at the school, and he built all the relation with artists, architects. And from that time, I would say that 80% of what we do is for United States. It happens because in America, there is a rule, there is a law. 0.5% of all what is built on public buildings in public construction goes to art. So you imagine they build an airport. An airport can be 200 million, even more. 0.5% goes to art. Now the New York City MTA, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, they just moved, I think I read on the newspaper, $35 billion for the reconstruction of 40, 50 subway stations. In each of them, there will be art. So that's the reason why, I don't know if it happens here in England, but in Italy, most of our artists move to America because they have many, many possibilities of getting a job. Because every month, there is something going on in public artwork. So they are invited by the MTA to say, okay, there's this station. They choose 2 or 3 artists. They say, bring a project, decide what to do. They get an idea, they put the idea, and once they get the job, then they decide, oh, I'm not saying that they're doing mosaic everywhere. We did more than 45 subway stations in New York, and I hope we already have the commission for 2 that we have to do next year, and I hope we're going to get more. But they have also beautiful art of statues of bronze. They have ceramic walls. They have a lot of things going on. So it's really a big, big art program that goes on. But this is not happening only in New York in the subways. It happens in all the airports, in all the train stations. It's really a matter of this law that every time they do something in public work, they have to give a small percentage to art, which is important because I come from Italy. Italy is known because they are art Italy. We have the Colosseo, we have the Uffizi. Okay, look at what's happening now in Italy. In this time in Italy, we are in a medieval time. 300-400 years from now, they will look back, and in Italy, there's nothing in our contemporary art. I don't do 1 square meter of mosaic for Italy. Nothing. I work only for countries like United States. We're going to do something also here in London, probably. We're having something doing on, but I'll talk to you later about the embassy. So it's just ridiculous that in Italy, in this moment, nobody is thinking of contemporary art and doing something in these days. It's very sad. So this job, for example, artist Zenobia Bailey, this job was built, we're actually doing the third of the 3 panels. This was the first panel. It's at the entrance of this subway. And this is the second one. It's like a little dome inside. This artist was incredible. She works with wool. She doesn't paint. She works with wool. So she makes ideas out of wool. And she came with these little samples of wood and said, I want these done in mosaic. So it was just amazing. But, and look, the effect is really beautiful. You go there and you see this thing, it's really nice. It's one of the few jobs that I really saw, even, people walking in, taking pictures was really nice. And this is a kind of detail of reproducing the wool effect, we decided to move much more free with the stones to give this vibrated effect. Because if we were working in a classical way, we would have lost this sense of the job. So it was really, and these are all images. This is a project we did for Al-Held. Al-Held passed away some years ago. He was a great artist. We did this job. It's for the MoMA, Museum of Modern Art. It's on 57th Street in New York. And this is the wall. And this is how his project was. He wanted to make it even more complicated, but fortunately we managed to make the background a little simple. It was quite long. You see, it was the entire wall walking on. So we'll go, and this was on the other side, always his type of project. And I'll show you some other subways now. This was the artist here, Amy Dixon. She put these people inside. This is in Times Square, New York. And so we cut out the space of these mosaics from the tiles, and she was putting all these. There were more than 90, 100 figures celebrating the New Year's Eve. So these are just samples of this work all through. It's funny to see, the publicity signs together with the mosaic. Jack Beale, a very classical artist. This artist made a kind of opposite process than many artists do. He started from very modern things and he turned back to classical. The story of Persephone, that coming out of hell brought spring. So hell was the subway. Persephone is the lady with the flowers in her hand, and the spring is represented by the market of fruit and vegetables. And the other panel on the opposite side, this is always the same, so that's Persephone. These are all existing people, friends of the artist. And on the other side, she's going back down to the subway, so you can see the first snow coming down behind the Empire State Building on the upper side. And of course, this is in Times Square. It's near Broadway. So he represented the thing as a scene shown as a Broadway show. Jameson Middlebrook, the artist, we did flowers all up on the wall on another subway station. I'm just showing, interesting, artistically maybe not so much, but an interesting idea. 81st Street Museum of Natural History, they decided to create 80 animals with the shadow of the prehistorical animal from where the animal comes from. So you see, you have all the different type of animals and things. It's quite an interesting idea. And then they created like 4 rooms with the 4 elements, like fire, earth, wind, and so this is the very interesting thing. You have all the schools coming to the museum. They walk up, they look at the thing. Elizabeth Murray, she created this strange kind of boot going all through the wall. So as you see, different artists, different ideas. This panel and this panel are in the Bronx. Faith Ringgold is the artist. In the Bronx, they did something different. They decided, some of the Bronx subways were really, bad, not even very secure and safe place where to walk at night. Anyway, they decided to show people that were born in those areas and that became famous. So you have these mosaics, and we were like scared, they're going to ruin the mosaic, they're going to paint them, they're going to destroy them. No, nobody ever touched them. They're like there for more than 15 years, and they're still perfect up on the wall. Andrea Dezzo. Andrea Dezzo is an artist from Romania. This is always a subway station we did for her. And she has this particular way of painting, creating this idea. She's been very successful. For her, we did also this school in New York. And she created these flowers, these butterflies. She has a very, very special thing. But she worked also for the U.S. Embassy in Bucharest, in her country. So these are the panels we did in the American Embassy. For the American embassies, we work for the State Department, and we've done several of them. This is another panel we've done. This is in New Jersey. It was ice buildings made by the name of that I have to look. Janet Longquist is the name of the artist of these panels. And this is a floor for Ellen Harvey. This is always up in the Bronx. And this was a floor made not only in smalti, but mostly in ceramic and some marble. we used to work, I would say 90% of the times, only with smalti from Venice and Murano, you know, the Orsoni, Donà smalti. But everybody knows that it's also a quite expensive material. After the big crisis in 2008, sometimes we had to manage of mixing types of materials because otherwise the budget was not enough for the project. So you'll see there will be some projects that there are areas of smalti, and in the background there are areas where we use the ceramic mixed with smalti and some things. This because of a budget reason, but I think the result is quite interesting. This is one of the projects that I'm talking about. This, the artist Sam Gilliam, we did a couple of works for him, and this is in Washington, D.C., and these are ceramic and smalti. Of course, the ceramic has a limitation in colors, but if you're able to mix some percentage of smalti together with the ceramic, you can obtain nice shadings and nice effects. This was an artist, McAdams. This is in a subway in New Jersey, and this is how it looks up on the thing. It's a kind of winter view. And okay, and now we go back to the great, great artist. This is Romare Bearden. Romare Bearden has been one of the most famous black artists of the United States. His jobs are in all the most famous museums. He was an incredible man. Like I said, one of the guys who used to come with, by the way, he could never even bring his paintings to Italy because they will always stop them in the customs, and and we had to put like, you know, for this you need to guarantee for like 200,000 euro, and so it was, forget it, send a nice photo and we'll work with that. And so we were working always with his photos, and he was doing these incredible collage, and we created these mosaics in large scale. This was a jazz band in Philadelphia train station, and they were so beautiful. I mean, and we could use a kind of modern technique, mixing big stones and small stones together. It was really, really amazing. One of his students, one of his, I would say, that learned from Romare Bearden was John Bigger. John Bigger has been also a very famous artist, and he has a foundation, and we worked for this foundation. We made this mosaic for them, very beautiful also, and with all the transparencies. If you do mosaic, you understand that doing transparencies in mosaic is one of the most difficult things. So Melvin Clark, jazz band. This is in New York City, the main train station, Grand Central Station in New York, and here we go. We move from subway and train stations to airports. Airports. This Seattle airport. In Seattle airport, they had a very interesting thing. I think the first airport where this idea started was the Washington, D.C. Ronald Reagan National Airport. They had some circle floors. You're going to see them later. Here they decided to do 9 columns. For each column, they call a different artist. And we did all of them, and of course it was interesting because every artist has his own ideas, his own way of doing the thing. This, for example, is not even an artist. He's a famous photographer, Peter DeLorre. So they took a photo of Peter DeLorre and they said, this is going to be a column. And this is what we did. This is a view of the other columns. This was a Rudy Audio, the artist. He painted this thing. This was Emmy Chang, a Chinese artist. So, of course, she did dragons and her typical things. Joanne Hammer. And this was Weber, the artist. And this is the view of the Seattle airport. Florida, Orlando airport. Paul Goodnight, this artist made this wall mosaic at the entrance. Of course, very Florida style with bright colors and all what is related with Florida. And then we did some floors, very big, by the way. These were more than 500 square meter floors, very modern with big pieces. And here we are in Washington. Frank Stella. Frank Stella, probably most of you know him. He's very famous. First lady in art. He wanted to do all the 9 floors, so he had a big discussion with the architect. The architect was Cesar Pelli. Fortunately, the architect was strong enough as the artist. Cesar Pelli is the man who built the Petronas Tower in Guadalumpur. So there was a kind of big discussion between Frank Stella that said, I want to do all the mosaics, and Cesar Pelli who said, no, you're going to do one, and we're going to call different artists to do all the others because we want to have a different idea. So this is the job we did from Frank Stella. And this is Joyce Scott, Richard Anuskiewicz. I just brought some samples. I couldn't bring all of them. Okay, this is, you know where this is. This is Cape Canaveral in Florida. Cars. These cars were interesting. Famous cars of the 30s and 40s. Of course, it's for Detroit. And I would like to bring your attention to all the reflections of light on the window, on the thing. It's really difficult. This was direct mosaic. The background, though, was studied by a computer, and we did it with the industrial material like Bisazza, you know. It's just a shading of black. But all the cars were made in Smalti, and these are just some samples of them. Very, very cool job. There was not an artist, but just photos sent by the companies. This is Joyce Kozloff. Joyce Kozloff takes her ideas from Far Eastern tradition, Indian art, and she created these two panels. These were quite big. These were more than 10 meters high, and they are for a bank in Los Angeles. This is Roger Brown. Roger Brown, a quite interesting artist. We did 3 big projects for him. This was a project in Detroit, in LaSalle Street. It's right in front of the town hall. And there was this Daedalus and Icarus. This is more than 200 square meters big. The lines that you see across are the expansion joints of the wall, because as in those years, let's say, well, even now, expansion joints for big murals are necessary because, again, if the building moves, those will protect the project. So these are just some images of the project in detail. And this is a thing we did for him, Health Brown Center. It's a kind of private hospital. And this is a kind of impressive mosaic we did for him. This is for the World Council, where the main health center of AIDS in New York. This was the view. The artist died of AIDS. But it has a kind of second, I would say even more emotional effect, because you can see the Twin Towers on the center of the panel. So all these people and all these texts under the Twin Towers after 9/11 is something special. This was a ceiling. That's me in the center, just to give an idea of the size. Budoff, Nathan Budoff, the artist. This was for Puerto Rico train station, and this is how it looks from above. This was reverse on paper, of course, and this is, you know, how it looks from below. And this was a floor, an Arabian carpet. A very interesting idea. The artist Ulrike and Liam Bacher. This is in Salzburg. It's not in America. And she made this carpet on this structure, which is kind of suspended from the ground. And during the night, there are some lights under it. And so it looks like a flying carpet, which is the name of the thing. This is in a football stadium in Friuli, in Trieste. And this artist had a very smart idea of putting some plastic above the painting and created this kind of idea. Again, here, what we call a modern technique of using big stones, small stones, give a beautiful effect. This is how it looks in real. Daru, this artist from South Korea. This is the LG Center of South Korea. We did all these panels. This was 150 square meter. Doing it in ceramic, doing it in Smalti, we saved more than 40,000 euro in changing the material. But mixing, it came nice. Unfortunately, I have only images after the installation, so you have these protections on front. This was another embassy. The artist, difficult. The artist in this, I don't even remember her name, but anyway, this is for the embassy in Belgrade. This is the embassy in Belgrade. So unfortunately, the name is missing now. I had too many names to remember. If it comes back, I'll tell you the name. And we did also the embassy in Dakar, which is this one. This is only 2 sections. This was very big, more than 70 meters long. Micheline Thomas created this collage of images from Dakar. Here we mixed ceramics, Smalti, marble, and we recreated her collage. This is outside the American Embassy. Portraits. This is idea. This was a simple idea, just creating a marble wall and having eyes, mouth, and nose coming out in a 3-dimensional way. Audrey Hepburn, of course, and Che Guevara, and Deng Xiaoling, and Mao Zedong, and John Paul II. So we're just showing different ways of making portraits in different even styles, because this is a very classical, but these are much more modern. So it's just different techniques of obtaining. This was all in marble, very difficult. This was for Disney World. They were creating the images of their best creators of their projects. And then what we call our small jewels. This was a little peacock. Little, it's only a meter 60 high by a meter 20 long, but it took more than 100 days of work. I would love to show you a detail of, if it's possible. Let's see. No, I'm not going to mess up this thing, so it's working now. But you should see the detail of the back. It's just amazing. And again, transparencies. These were Venetian masks, so you could see the transparency of the veil in front of the face. That it's quite difficult to do in mosaic. I think it's the most difficult thing to do, transparencies in mosaic. This was another Venetian mask made for a Russian man who wanted this panel inside his house, a head of a lion, some modern panels. These are literally small jewels, small panels that we did. This is in the First Lady of Kazakhstan wanted this in her bathroom, Liberty style. And finally, what we will all love to see in the world, mosaic everywhere. So this is our final. And that's it. I mean, this is all what we do. So I hope you enjoyed it, and that's all. If you have any question, I'm here.